Boom. There we are. Oh, that's the wrong one.
Live on YouTube. Excellent connection.
I like excellent connections. There we are.
I think it's working.
Okay.
Oh, that's the old one.
It is the old one. Here it is.
There it is.
Excellent connection.
Yes.
Yes, everything sounds good.
There we are.
Yep. Boom. Thank you, Juan, for your help.
You did it.
I don't know what I did.
Oh, just turn it off and turn it back on.
Yeah.
I'd be such a good IT guy.
That works with your computer.
Yeah.
All right, live on.
Works with almost everything.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't work. Have you turned it off and turned it back on?
Right.
Like your little internet connection,
Mm-hmm.
a router.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just shut her down.
Mm-hmm. Kick it.
I mean, it's sort of like going to sleep every night, right? Like at the end of the day, you've got problems. Like we're going to cycle power.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
We're going to shut down. We'll
Sleep
try it
mode.
again.
Mm-hmm. I used to have a TV. My parents used to have a TV that was, back whenever they were big boxes, where when you turned it on, you actually had to hit the side of the TV for the picture to kick on.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Wow.
And it got to the point where like you had to hit it harder and harder. And so we went from hitting it to sitting down and kicking it.
Mm-hmm.
And then it got to the point where it was like, well, the picture's out. We can't hit it any harder. We don't
Smash it.
Yeah.
I want to smash it anyway.
Yeah, John Sr. would have been proud.
Yeah, I just said, oh, yeah. I'd done that the first
Right.
day. Right out the window.
Warning, the Catholic Man Show contains high levels of manliness. It's simple, really. You either want to grow in virtue and holiness, or you want to be a sissy, whiny baby. If you choose to move forward, grab your whiskey glass, because the Catholic Man Show is starting right now.
Welcome to the Catholic Man Show. We're on the Lord's team, the winning side, so raise your glass. Adam Minahan here, sitting in studio with our best friend David Niles, best friend Juan Posada. We have another best friend, a friend of the diocese. I'm really excited to have him on. Ever since I started working for the diocese, I've been eager to get our guest on today. We have Mr. David Dean. David, you have known by a lot of different things.
Yes.
Husband of Lori.
Correct.
Probably your most famous one.
Yes. Yes.
You're also the superintendent of Catholic schools here in the diocese.
I am.
You are also a godchild of John Sr.
That is correct.
You were...
No kidding?
Did you not know this?
I don't know if I knew that.
Yeah, you had to have known this.
I probably did know that.
You just forgot.
You probably forgot.
I
You
totally-
were at one time a
Totally forgot.
basketball coach,
That's correct. Yes, basketball.
Volleyball coach.
volleyball coach,
Girls volleyball.
girls volleyball.
You coached my mother-in-law.
I did indeed.
Yeah.
I did. I tried to get her into the Olympics.
Yeah. She didn't get
But
there.
She was focused on her studies. She had her priorities straight.
Priority
Terrible
straight.
choice.
But no, David, I'm so excited to have you here on the show. I appreciate you carving out time to hang out with us this
Well,
evening.
thank you. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to talk about a topic that has been something that I know Dave, Juan, and I have spent many hours out in the backyard discussing. And I think that it's a topic that if you haven't discussed it yet as a young father or a guy who is engaged or preparing for marriage, something that you need to think about seriously, which is when you have children, if God has blesses you with children, how sports is going to affect your family life, how you are going to raise your child in sports or not in sports, what the pros are, what the cons are, how you have to give up a little bit to make some things happen, figuring out what the highest good is for your family, all sorts of things.
Yeah, it's really difficult today. Extremely difficult. Sports is like an elixir
Right.
Just we like to drink from it, and it does strange things to us sometimes.
Yeah, and it could cause you to get your priorities off kilter, and very quickly without even realizing it.
Oh, that's right. That's right. It just pulls you in.
Right. Yeah. So, it'll be a good discussion. But before we do, we're gonna have a whiskey that we've had before, but it's marketed in a specific way that I wanted to make sure to highlight it. Dave, will you grab the can there? So this is Ardbeg Anoa. We've had this before. However, this is the barbecue smoker edition, and like we said, this is a marketing ploy, but it worked, obviously.
Yeah, because the whiskey is just
we bought it.
the Anoa.
Yeah, Anoa. Yeah, right.
No, it's not like a smokier version of the Anoa.
That is correct. That is my understanding.
Mm-hmm.
But what it comes in is in a case that actually has a little canister to put wood chips in that you can place in your barbecue grill. So if you have a gas smoker, you use charcoal, and you don't have an actual smoker, but you have a grill, you can put these in there. My dad does this all the time with what he uses,
especially if you're using gas.
Right. That way it gives it a little bit of a smoky
real
flavor.
charcoal flavor.
Yeah. So anyway, it's one of those things. Like I said, it's kind of a marketing ploy, but if you're looking for one,
also this can, if you take the bottom and the top off, and if you are lucky enough to own a bazooka, this actually functions as a silencer. This is a the can itself is a bazooka silencer. For those of us who have a bazooka,
I think that's important.
It's
when
a
you're
self-defense.
shooting it in the neighborhood.
It's a self-defense bazooka. Okay.
okay.
You never know.
You get fewer complaints.
Right,
from
when a
neighbors.
dragon might attack or something, and you'll be like, it's a good thing I have the bazooka.
So Ardbeg is known, it's an Isla whiskey. It is known to have a smoky, sweet, peaty taste to it.
It's like a cousin of Lafroig. I buy more Ardbeg than anything.
Because it's cheaper.
It's cheaper, yeah.
Yeah, but so if you're not familiar, in Scotland, Ardbeg, Lafroig, and Lagavulin are all within a 5-mile linear path.
I haven't had the Anoa, though, in a long time.
So we're on the Lord's team.
The winning side.
So raise your glass.
Cheers.
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 Cheers. Color is kind of a pale, cloudy yellow.
Kind of typical of Ardbeg, I think.
Yeah.
They tend to have a lighter color.
Has a nice nose on it. If you like peat, this is good. And this is the time of I know Dave is not a time of year whiskey guy, but this to me is the time of year. We're getting into the time of year of peaty, smoky scotches. The cold weather, the weather's changing, fires in the fireplace are being lit. Yeah, I mean it's just the way to go, in my opinion.
Pinion in there.
Little pinion wood in the chimney, yeah, and sit outside with a cigar. And
so this is sherry cask.
Is that why it has a little?
It says PX Sherry and First Fill Bourbon.
Okay, it does have a little sweeter on the nose. But if you like peated scotches, Ardbeg is one that you're not gonna be disappointed with.
Yeah,
that's very good.
And like the 10, it's like $50 in that range, very close.
This one is only 60.
Really?
So, yeah. So it's
for some reason I thought this one was like 70.
Nope, this was 60.
So that's not bad.
It's a nice, change on in pace,
right.
but only $10 difference.
I dig
the
it.
barbecue with it.
And you get a little barbecue grilled chip.
Yeah.
I mean, why not?
Yeah. So, Dave, we are.
There's
Uh-oh.
safety instructions.
Good, which is always nice to
just in
throw
case.
them away. Just don't even look at them.
You don't want to get injured by the.
You don't need those.
Is that for the grill or the bazooka?
It's a good distinction.
If you have a bazooka, you don't need safety instructions.
Well,
yeah.
I take that back.
I don't know.
Dave, so it's good. We've been getting some new listeners. We're on a few new radio stations.
Yeah.
It would be good just to rehash why we drink on air. What's the purpose?
We haven't done that in a while.
We haven't done that in a while, and so every time we go a while and new people start listening, the first thing they always say on the show as a feedback.
Yeah.
is,
How come you don't talk about the topic for
right? So
so
it's good to
every episode we do three things. We highlight the first thing we do is open, review, and enjoy a manly beverage. We're doing that right now. it's going swimmingly so far. The second thing we do typically is we will highlight a man gear of some kind. This is just dude stuff, things that are in your garage, and we want to talk about hopefully why they're manly. If a thing is said to be manly, then there must be something we can learn about manliness from the virtues of the thing that we're talking about, right? So, and then finally we have a topic, a discussion on manly things.
Whatever we decide.
It's the man show, so everything, it's all about manly things.
Yeah.
Virtue.
And if you are one of the new listeners, you should be warned. Here on the Catholic Man Show, we are dealing with very toxic levels of authentic masculinity. So if you or anyone in the listening radius is susceptible to high levels of manliness, please be warned. The show will be harmful to your health.
Also,
Sounds like a government warning.
There we go.
Yeah. I also didn't give you another title that I forgot to introduce.
We only
you
ha-
as.
we have-
Our Latin teacher. We've talked on the show that we've been.
This is
doing
the guy.
Latin. He's the guy that's teaching us Latin.
Salvete.
Salve.
Quo modo
Yeah.
valetis.
Si.
Optime.
Optime.
Bene.
Bene.
Es problema.
Es
Yes,
problema.
problema.
Magna.
I didn't say I was doing well in the class. I did not claim that.
But we don't give grades, so it's okay.
So maybe a good way to start, David, is to talk about virtue in general. When you were talking, you gave a talk last week at Christ the King, Parish of Christ the King, on this topic of virtue in sports, and you asked a question on what in Latin, what does virtue mean? And I actually answered it, but you didn't hear me. And then a couple of people pointed at me.
Was that right?
After you gave the answer, but I didn't want to,
You're humble, right?
Didn't want to toot my own horn.
Yeah,
He's
but
humble.
Except that now that I have a podcast and a platform in which I can
I can do it to a lot of
toot
other
it
people.
very publicly, I
Right.
am taking
Yes,
advantage.
So what does it mean in Latin? What does virtue mean in Latin? Vir.
It comes from the Latin word vir, which means man or power. And so it's Cicero in his Tusculan Disputations reference this, the root of this word, and that one of the qualities of being a vir is fortitude.
Mm-hmm.
And so hopefully we men will manifest those qualities of fortitude
Right.
through virtue, which is a strength, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a wonderful word, actually. There's actually a feminine version of it, which some people are not aware of in Latin.
Okay, which is?
Virago.
Virago?
Virago, not Virgo. Though who knows, maybe a connection there too. But it's kind of interesting. So, but I know this is the man show, so
Yes.
we're going to talk about vir
Yeah.
and virtue.
So it's like virtues are the powers of man, essentially.
Yes. Power and force and strength of a man.
Yeah, which is, when you think about it that way, it's like, oh yeah, I'm a stronger person now that I have these virtues to rely on. So, excellent.
Awesome. Okay, so when we get back, I think we're going to just jump right into the topic
Yeah.
because there's a lot of things that we'd like to discuss. So we're going to nix the gear today and jump straight into the topic. We're here with Mr. David Dean, Superintendent of Catholic Schools for the Diocese of Tulsa, Eastern Oklahoma, and a lot of other awesome titles. We'll be right back.
So in the break, I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Anthony Nucio.
Okay.
One year anniversary, and he's joining us live today with his wife.
Oh,
First
wonderful.
year
So wait, so 1 year of what?
of marriage.
Oh, 1 year of marriage.
Anniversary. Happy anniversary.
Oh, happy anniversary.
Happy
Anthony.
anniversary, Anthony.
Yeah.
Happy anniversary.
And
I think
Mrs.
he's one of our patrons.
Nucio, is that what you said? Or Nucio?
I said Nucio,
Nucio?
but
We probably are saying it wrong.
he will
Yeah.
tell us if he's wrong or right.
Yeah,
I'll bet.
he's a patron member. So you can go to patreon.com/The Catholic Man Show if you want to support the show. But yeah, thank you, Anthony, and happy anniversary to you and your beloved. Cool. Yeah, we can keep going.
Welcome back to the Catholic Man Show. I'm David Niles here with Adam Minahan. We are joined by the one and only David Dean.
It's good to be here.
Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for inviting
So,
me.
one of your claims to fame is that you were associated with the great John Senior.
Yes.
We mentioned that you are his godson.
Correct. Yes, I attended the humanities program at Kansas.
Uh-huh.
And I enrolled in the oral Latin, as he called it, as a freshman. And so the program itself was 2 years. I took 4 years of Latin under Dr. Senior. And then when I graduated, I went and taught. Met someone from your family there, as we referenced earlier.
Yeah.
Coached your mother-in-law.
But you
actually.
also helped teach some of the Latin classes, right?
Yes. So after my 2 years of teaching in Hutchinson, Dr. Senior actually called me one day and said, David, would you like to come back and teach Latin under me or with me and work on your master's? And, of course, I said yes.
Mm-hmm.
And I went back up, and I did that for four more years, actually, until he got very sick and had to retire. But it was very nervous the first year. I obviously thought, kind of idolized him, right? It was my senior year that I actually converted, and he was my godfather, as you mentioned. And so I'll never forget that first month or so, actually going into the classroom and teaching with him. It's like, I don't belong here. I'm not up for that. I can't do this. I'm next to this great man, this great teacher, this great Catholic, and I'm like, what am I doing here? So it's kind of nerve-wracking at first, but he's very kind and a gentle man, and so he worked with me even amidst all my mistakes and so forth, and then eventually I went on and taught another class, because what he really needed was help. He had enough students that wanted to take his classes that after that first semester I did kind of the second semester Latin course, and then he could go on and teach upper levels of Latin. And then the following year, we kind of repeated that process where I would maybe even go on to teach a second year after a year or so of Latin. And, the fun thing was about all that was that because the students in the humanities program, we all knew each other. And so typically in a Latin class like that, if they took a first semester, they'd take a second semester.
Yeah.
And the ones that hung in then would take third and fourth semester. And so by the end of that 2 years or so, we were really good friends. And then, of course, they could go on and take third and fourth year like I did when I was an undergraduate. But then by that time, usually they would go into Dr. Senior. And, of course, sometimes you'd have to take a class from another professor. Just if you're going to go that far with it and actually get a major in it, you had to take some other Latin, besides that. But, no, it was a great experience. He was a great teacher. Obviously, his reputation it continues long after his passing.
So a lot of people who may not know Dr. Senior, I kind of after I read his books, kind of romanticize the idea of even being able to hang out with him and pick his brain. But for those who aren't familiar with him, why was he so different as a teacher? What was his style that caused him to be so successful or efficient with how he ran his courses?
Well, there were two different kinds of courses. So in the humanities program, you had the three professors, Dr. Quinn, Dr. Nellick, and Dr. Senior, and they're all very different personalities or temperaments. That if you study the classical temperaments, Dr. Cena was very melancholy, and so he was kind of the quieter one of the three. And he would sit there and they'd read a passage, say from the opening of the Iliad or the Aeneid or something, and then they'd all begin to comment on it and literally have a conversation. So it wasn't a lecture. And I never forget, the first thing I was so impressed with was that they never had notes in front of them. So they would read this passage, and then they would have this conversation for an hour and a half. But to Dr. Senior specifically, he had this way of, as they would play off of one another during this conversation, we always used to say he would kind of soar. He would just sort of take off with this discussion. Maybe it was about let's say it's the Odyssey and you're going home, what's the importance of home and being at home and, even being a good father and all these good things and being virtuous. And so he would just start talking, and he would just very calmly, and he would just sort of go and just kind of say, like on wings, probably the Holy Spirit at work there. And I think that the most phenomenal thing about him was his humility. So he was brilliant. I mean, he knew Latin, he knew the classics, the literature, and yet if you met him on the street, you would never know it. And even as a student, you would have to go and kind of run him down, which eventually a lot of kids did. Right? They just wanted to hear him speak and speak and speak forever. I'm sure it was kind of a cross for him almost in a way. In the sense that he loved teaching. He was a real teacher, but I'm sure he never had a spare moment. Like myself and a lot of other students, we would line up at his office door just to talk to him. For all the obvious reason. We'd walk with him from the classroom back to his office, or if we saw him somewhere, we'd strike up a conversation, and we do that with all three of the professors. But and so he would always talk to you a little bit, but oftentimes he had places to go or meetings and so forth. So his humility, I think, just struck is what really first kind of caught my imagination. Is here is this brilliant man who knows so much about so many things, and probably most importantly, can teach it. So when I was at KU, I was still 17, and I was not at the top of the IQ chart. And so for him and the other two professors certainly to bring these great ideas down to a level where I was. And of course, this was not too long after the great hippie time of the 60s. It was actually the 70s, and so at KU at that time, it was a lot of long hair and drugs, sex, rock and roll, and so forth. So we were immersed in a culture that was certainly antagonistic to what the professors were trying to do. And so the other thing, I said there's two parts of this. One was the humanities program, the other was the Latin. So I ended up taking this Latin course, and it's all oral. I mean, you walk in, there's no textbook. It's like what I'm trying to do right now with the adults. Yeah. And it was strange at first. You're in college. So first of all, I'm not taking notes. Second of all, there's no book. And of course, there's a temptation as a 17-year-old to say, oh, I can blow this class off, right? Who's going to know?
Sure.
But obviously I didn't. It was, or not very often. Had a few late nights there. Sure. But so we go in both those cases, the humanities program and the Latin course, you had to listen. But the beautiful thing about the Latin course was Dr. Senior would ask you questions like, quid est, and he'd point to something in the room, or quid est nomen tuum, what is your name? And you'd say nomen meum David, and so forth. And then as you went on through the courses, the questions get more complicated and longer answers. And so you really had to listen. And it wasn't until, of course, a couple years later, that I began to realize why they did this, right? And Dr. Senior specifically with the Latin, because it's in your memory, it's not in the book. And I'll never forget once as a graduate student, we were teaching, and the other professors in the class department, many who, were good people. I don't mean to put them down here, but they taught the textbook method. They used Wheelock or some of those texts. If some of you out there studied Latin, you probably remember Wheelock or a couple of the other, Henley and some of the others. And so we got into this argument one day that if we took one of the students from Dr. Senior's Latin class, given the way we had learned it, and a student from one of these other sections, and we had to sit down and translate a text, but without a dictionary.
Who could do better?
Who would do better? The other professors never took us up on the challenge, but I think I can honestly say, again, in a spirit of humility, that I really believe that a student going through Dr. Senior's class would have done better with that translation without the aid of a dictionary or something like that. So, again, just pointing out where is the learning, right? Where's the language? And it's it's not just in your mind. He'd walk around the room and he'd point things, and we had to be kind of on our toes, so to speak. Sure. And so what you get into, it's part of you. It's your body. It's your, you point your hands. I'll tell you a great little story one time. You probably couldn't do this today. You get arrested. But I'll never forget in one of the classes, he had one of the kids take their shoe and their sock off and put their foot up on the desk. And he did, the three little piggy. This little piggy went to market This little piggy went
Yeah.
home. It's like wee all the way home. All this stuff, on the students' toes. And so I bring that up because it was very tactile, right? It was, and he'd say, "No, y'all need to go home and do this, or find someone, your roommate." And he'd always say these kind of crazy things, and we were like, "What? Can't do that." But my point here is more the pedagogical one, is that language is just a part of us. It's just not, in the memory. And by the way, language comes to Latin word lingua, which is your tongue.
Mm-hmm.
So it really is.
What tongue do you? Yeah, like how many tongues do you speak?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that because there's a lot of people who don't know about
Mm-hmm.
the humanities course, and
there's a lot of people who do.
there's a lot of people who do,
And would love to hear this story.
I'm sure, like a lot of your stories that you have to tell.
Well, I was blessed just to come along at the right time.
I mean, we've got Clear Creek, we've got several bishops,
Yes.
that are all as a result of
Mm-hmm.
the Great Humanities program. So anyway, I do want to actually ask you about sports. Do you have one other thing you wanted to say?
No, I was just going to say too. I think another thing the program did was there were a number of students who didn't end up converting to the church, but they became much more serious about their own faith.
Uh-huh.
And then, of course, I lost touch with them. Maybe they eventually came into the church, but
Yeah. Well, and that's why they kind of
yeah.
shut it down, right? Because it was public
Oh,
school.
that's right.
And,
Oh,
like
that's
we were
right,
converting too many. They were
Yeah.
converting too many people
we were
to Catholic.
indoctrinating
Yeah.
students. And yes.
Okay, so when we get back, we're gonna jump into the topic of virtue and sports and how to keep that ordered within the household. We're here with David Dean. I'm Adam Minahan with David Niles. We'll be right back.
Was that really why they shut the program down? Because they were worried about people converting?
Yeah, it was the conversions.
It was, really?
It really was.
Uh-huh.
You can more than that, just rotate the whole mic.
Yes, that's what I did. I just rotated it.
Okay.
Yeah, it was the conversions, David. There were so many at one point that, and I think too within the university, because not all the professors and administrators within the university knew about all the conversions, at least initially. But again, it was that idea of objective truth. I mean, these three professors were saying there is objective truth, and in the 70s, coming out of the 60s and so forth, there's no way, right? That was taboo. No one would be so stupid to ever suggest that something's absolutely true.
Yeah. I mean, well,
Absolutely.
Are you absolutely sure about that? You know?
Absolutely. 2 + 2 is 4.
Right.
Right?
I mean, maybe
Yes.
for you.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
Gotta be.
Gotta
right?
be.
So no, but it was they really came after the program hard. One of the interesting thing was that the administration, because the professors were all tenured, they just couldn't fire them. So they sort of bled the program to death, is how we put it at the time. I was in graduate school when it really got bad, when the university really went after him, and that's what they just tried to bleed it out very slowly. And it was funny. The professors would talk about it sort of behind the scenes and say, "What a bunch of cowards! Why don't they just come after us?"
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And but they never did. And a lot of good conversation around how that played out, even though it was sad and it was not a good thing.
It would have been interesting to hear the three professors at a pub drinking a beer discussing this by themselves,
Yes.
and what what kind of conversation really came from that.
Well, that was one of the joys of going back in graduate school, because then occasionally, Dr. Nellick had pretty much retired at that point. He was around very little, but a couple of times we would, Dr. Cena, Dr. Quinn, and I, maybe another graduate student or two, we would go. Wouldn't go have a beer or anything, but go maybe have breakfast or coffee somewhere, at Denny's or someplace, and just sit around, and then we could talk about all this other stuff, right? And so it was. That's how I know some of those stories about how they were really tired of these sort of underhanded attacks by the administration, instead of just coming out.
Yeah, like just really tell us what you really think.
Right, right. Let's confront us as men.
Right.
And let's have this discussion.
Have a little fortitude.
Yes, practice some fortitude.
But the thing is, they knew that they would lose if they did that.
Yeah, I think it would have been a fairly short argument.
Right.
In other words, it wouldn't have gone far.
Yeah.
Because obviously they didn't have anything,
And they weren't telling people to convert or even talking about the tenets of the Catholic faith, right? I mean, it was mostly just about objective truth and...
Correct. The humanities program was 2 years, and it covered the Greeks, the Romans, the Middle Ages, and modernity. And so much of that is not even Christian.
Yeah.
And they never, ever spoke, about the Catholic Church. In fact, another story I have is that after about 2 years, after I was just finishing the program, I went to Dr. Senior, because I'd also had him for Latin at that point for 2 years. I said, okay, Dr. Senior, there is something you are not telling us, and what is it? And this was in his office. I made an appointment. And he goes, well, David, I can't tell you. And I with all due respect, Dr. Cena, but like BS.
Right.
This
You're
is
going to tell me now.
Yeah, I mean, you have academic freedom. This is the modern university, right? Don't tell me you can't tell me. You can tell me almost anything, right? And so
I won't tell anybody that you told me.
exactly. So we were very clandestine, and shut the door in his office. And he goes, David, we're all Catholic. And I just, that was not the answer I was expecting. No, not at all. And I was like,
So what?
Yeah. So I just pondered that a little bit. He talked about it just a little bit, and then we went on to some of the topic, and then I went home with my head sort of swimming a little bit. And eventually,
What were you before?
I was raised Presbyterian.
But you weren't baptized.
Yes, I was.
Oh, so then so if you're already baptized, how did John Sr. become your godfather?
We did a conditional baptism and a confirmation all at once.
Okay, because
So
you weren't sure of the
form.
form of your
Correct.
baptism.
I was an infant, obviously.
Uh-huh.
And so we went into Kansas City. We did a conditional one, and then I was confirmed. When I did my first confession and all that. So it was a big night. In fact, one of the monks, Clear Creek, Father Bales, was my roommate in college. So of course I invited him to come along as well, and so it was a great evening. We just drove.
Was he loud and obnoxious back in college?
No,
Because it would be hilarious if he was like super loud and then like went to a contemplative life.
Right, yeah.
no, he really. I tell you what,
The great silence.
He was uber smart.
Really?
Oh yeah, it always kind of disgusted me. I mean, I love the guy, right? I still do go see him in the monastery, but he'd just get great grades, and I'd be over there studying all day.
You suck.
Yeah, I'm like, you sicken me.
Right.
And
Yeah.
but he was just a really good guy. In fact, he was really the one who kind of nudged me a little bit to coming into the church. And also, he was the one that got me into the Latin class. I had originally enrolled in Spanish, and I didn't like it. No offense, Juan Pablo. But
You would have never met your wife?
No, I never would have.
Because that was when you came back, right?
Correct, yeah. When I was in graduate school,
Mm-hmm.
she enrolled in the Latin class, and she was a senior. And she asked me to do this dance because I was in a fraternity, and then her sorority was next door to our fraternity. We never liked one another, and I'm not talking about us because I'm older than she is.
Yeah.
But the fraternity sorority, we never liked one another. We would torment them, and they were a little nicer than we were, I guess. But
That doesn't surprise me.
yeah. So it's probably good I didn't know her when I was actually in college, because I'm sure she would have run the other direction. But
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
I feel that I have expressed the very similar sentiments about my own wife.
Yeah.
I'm really glad
Yeah.
we didn't hang out when I was in college, because this whole thing
It's funny how that works.
probably
would
would
not
not
have
have
happened. No, it definitely would not have happened.
Yeah, so she asked me to dance, and I said no. Being
an-
professional.
Like an idiot. Oh, well,
So-
yeah, because you're professional, right?
Well,
Okay,
he's like, were you
you're-
teaching
you're
her class?
you're
So
teaching.
guess who called me on it? Dr.
Dr. Senior?
Senior. Because I went back to his office like the next week. We'd meet weekly about the Latin class we were teaching. I said, well, Dr. Senior, Lori Hall was her name, her maiden name, Hall. And he knew her very well because she'd been through the program and all that. And, she asked me to do this dance. And I said, no. And he looks at me, he gets this quizzical look on his face, goes, are you stupid?
You know what? You're fired.
Yeah. So I had to beg for my job. And so he, I was crestfallen. My ego had been severely bruised. But at any rate, that was good for me. And obviously we caught up with each other, Lori and I did, a week or so later. And
Did you go to the dance?
I did not. No, missed that one. So, but we of course, she was in my class every day, and
Yeah.
and so forth. And so we started dating, and we were married within about 9 months.
Sweet.
Yeah. So and Dr. Senior came to our wedding.
That's awesome.
So that was very nice of him. I think he knew he had something to do with that.
Sure.
Did you know Brother Joseph? Was he?
Yeah, Joseph Marie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah,
But
Mark
you weren't
Owen.
ever- you
Mark
were-
Owen was his name.
You weren't
Before-
ever roommates with him.
No,
Okay.
it was Rick Bales. Now he doesn't admit that to very many people, but no, he was great. He was a very good influence on me.
Brother Joseph's name is Mark.
Yeah, I think it was Mark Owen.
But the monks don't often change their name, do they?
Well, they take a
At
name
Clear
as
Creek.
once they profess and actually become a monk. Now brother is of course not a father.
Right.
It was a choice he made. He wanted to be a brother and remain
Uh-huh.
a brother, and so once they
Yeah,
take those vows,
as a lay brother, right?
and they still can choose a name, and so he chose Joseph Marie, I believe it is.
Oh, really? Because like several of the other monks, it's just they're like Brother Nesbit.
Mm-hmm.
Nesbit's just his last name.
Mm-hmm.
Father
Bachman.
Father Bachman, that's his last name.
Mm-hmm.
One who gave the talk to us. Anyway,
Yeah.
I didn't realize that they took different names. It's good to know.
Yeah, they did. Father Bales is Francis or Francois. When they were at Foncombeau.
Yeah.
Francois, but I guess it's up to them maybe.
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay, let's keep rolling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe.
And here we go.
One's not sure. There it goes. Welcome back to the Catholic Man Show. We're here talking with David Dean. If you are listening on the radio right now or the podcast and you don't typically listen on via YouTube Live or Facebook Live, I highly suggest going back and listening because in between breaks we had a great conversation with David Dean on more about John Sr., some stories about his lovely wife and how they met. So it's a bonus if you want to go check that out on YouTube or Facebook Live. But we're here today to talk about sports. Talk about virtue within sports, how to keep it ordered, how to keep it in its right place within the family. You gave a talk, like we mentioned, at the Parish of Christ the King recently, and you started out talking about how sports has been around for a very, very long time and how it actually has been tied to religion, which I didn't realize because I'd heard before that there was an argument that had been made that sports really didn't come into priority or come into the mainstream until the Industrial Revolution came, when people
No longer had farm work to do, and there was like
there need to be competition or things like that. But
I think that there was like a noticeable rise in like organized sports, especially
maybe that's what it was. Organized
whereas
sports.
up until then it was more like
Olympics
impromptu or
Well,
that
I think it's interesting because the early Olympics were certainly somewhat organized. I mean, these athletes train, for the wrestling, the running, the javelin throwing, or all the different sports they had, and they really trained because there were honors obviously for the winner, and there's a lot of literature that's extant that explains the glories of being the victorious athlete in ancient Greece or even on up into
trying
Rome.
to outrun the lion and
Yes, which is always a good thing.
Actually, you don't have to outrun it. You just have to outrun the person next to you.
That's correct.
Right.
That's right, like the bear in the forest.
Right.
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 Yeah. So
Yeah.
just be faster than your neighbor. That doesn't sound like the first commandment, though, does it?
you're either going to run faster or you won't.
Yeah.
or not for long.
Right, yeah.
But no, it is interesting that sports has such a great history, and it is tied to religion. A lot of the events were done around religious events. I think one of the stories I told the other night at this talk was that remember in the Iliad that Achilles' best friend Patroclus is killed. Remember, by Hector. And so one of the things they do is they have these funeral games. And so there was certainly a religious element to it, 'cause those games were, directed toward or invoke the different gods and goddesses at the time. But there were all these great games like javelin throwing and running again and wrestling, and I think even some games with swords and so forth that they played. I believe there were 9 different events that took place as part of the funeral games. So in honor of Patroclus, who had been killed. So we have that, and all through antiquity, there's so many examples of athletics, sports being a very important part of the culture. And of course, the Olympics are the most famous example, I guess. You can go to Olympia today in Greece, and you can go right down on the field, as it is, a track, so to speak, around it, and what's left of a few stone bleachers. But it's I've actually been there, and it's we went with the humanities program, actually.
Oh, cool.
We took a trip to Greece, a bunch of us, and it's like going to Delphi or the Parthenon in Athens. You walk into this place and you realize that people have been there 2,500 years ago or more, and you just, with the right mind, you just take it in. You just walk around and imagine. And of course, it helps if you've read some of the Greek literature and so forth, and you just take it in and you imagine the races going on there, and just all the events of antiquity, and all these people in the Oracle at Delphi, and you start thinking about Socrates and just all these great things. So yeah, there's a great history there, and it's I had to condense it the other night because there is so much. Even the Egyptians were believed to have games and so forth, even possibly before the Greeks.
I mean, it only makes sense to me where if you have men with any spare time at all,
yes,
they're going to be like, oh yeah, well,
I can beat you at this.
Right. I'll bet I'm better at this than you.
No, that's right. And another thing I mentioned too was that it's very tied into the martial arts, and by that I don't just mean like karate and those things we do today, but in a more generic sense of war. I mean, think about the Spartans. Now, I think they went maybe a little to the extreme there. When you were 5 or 6 year old boy, you left your family and went and trained. And of course, obviously, a lot of that's it's just pure athleticism. But that at some point, it's learning how to handle a sword, right, and how to actually engage in a battle. And I'm sure some of the strategy and so forth that goes with that. So there's a great history there too. And think of the training of the Roman legions. I'm sure they had lots of training, and the sort of dark side of it would be the gladiators in the Colosseum and so forth that we know quite a bit about, and the training, the way they trained, to be great gladiators. For obviously men were slaves, and so that was their path to freedom. If they could train sufficiently and maybe fight their way out of slavery. So yeah, it's an incredible history. But I do think you had a point earlier that obviously today it's more organized and in some sense, and we start, and of course it's changed. I think the end of these things, of sports particularly, has mutated in a
You're right.
manner
They
that's
become something in and of themselves instead of an act of leisure,
correct.
I think that's traditionally, like, oh, hey, after mass, there's people are playing baseball, or people are, why? Just because it's fun.
It's fun.
It's
That's right.
It's just good to do. But now it's like, no, the sport is the thing. It's like not about fun.
No, it's
or
not.
community.
It's about the sport.
Yeah, I made a distinction the other night during this talk, is that I asked him, I said, would you rather be an amateur or a professional? And we could apply this to a lot of things in life, but
I'd want to be a professional for about 5 years, and then I'm going to retire
I just want the
super
paycheck.
rich.
Yeah.
With like all kinds of endorsement deals, and I'll be an amateur for the rest of my life.
I think that deserves a gong. So amateur, if you know some Latin, the AMAT is he, she, or it, third person singular loves, and so it has to do with an amateur loves the sport. So the point you were making earlier, before you went off the road there, David, with young people, because I was talking to parents whose children were in a K through 8 school. We should be teaching these kids to love a sport.
Right.
The one I'm most familiar with is basketball, so I use that as my example most of the time. But really learn the sport, learn to love it. How to do it correctly. Again, training, discipline, right? Discipline, the discipline of the sport. So do you learn to pass correctly, dribble and shoot and so forth? And there are ways to do that correctly that will make you a better shooter, passer, dribbler, and so on, a rebounder. And to learn those things, and so there's a discipline there. And again, that's where our Latin comes in.
Disciple.
Disciple. It literally means to learn.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes we use that expression, learn a discipline. It's kind of redundant. So you're learning to learn.
Yeah.
But
you do have to learn, though.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And so, and one of the best words is disciple, right? I mean, it's there's someone who's learning. So with the young kids, we should be focusing on that, not winning. I mentioned, I thought it was terrible. There was a football game in California just last week. The team won 106-0.
Wow.
And, there's something disordered there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and I realize varsity sports, and I would agree that varsity sports is going to be more competitive. I understand that, and that's a high school. But I still think that's wrong, that type of score. Coach should have pulled back or, put somebody else in or done something. But
Something.
yeah. But for younger kids, back to the audience that I was addressing, is to teach them to love that sport. And I tried to make the further analogy to school. Even if English is not your favorite subject, as a student, you need to respect the fact that it's a discipline that's worth learning for itself, not for what it's going to get you. Now, an English degree is not going to get you much nowadays, but you know what I mean. It's maybe science is a better example, right?
Yeah.
You should learn the principles and truths of science for what they are, because there's a goodness and a beauty there. In those principles, and that's what we should be teaching our children, not some distant goal that's probably, at least in sports, unrealistic.
Right, and that's when it gets ridiculous, right? When you take it to that extreme, where you're trying to teach little Johnny, who's 8 years old, so that way he can get a D1 scholarship, and so you have him in traveling teams, and then you have him taking personal lessons, and then you have him, scouting over here with another team, so that way maybe he can get more exposure. And
on every break, you're entering into a tournament.
Right.
So
Correct.
there's no such thing as fall break or spring break it's like
or summer break
or Christmas break. You're traveling and
it really does disrupt the family.
right.
It's obviously usually what happens. One parent goes with that child, the other parent stays home with the other children, so you're separated for days at a time, and you live in a motel room and eating junk food and that whole scene, and it's just there's nothing very familial about it. You might have some good time as a father with your son. Let's say they're playing basketball or tennis, that might be beneficial in a little way, but the rest of the family's not there.
yeah,
Right.
and especially if that's the modus operandi.
Yes, yeah,
That's just not going to cultivate a good. It's not going to bring good culture into your family.
no, it's not, and the father's gone. And
Right. We'll be right back. We're going to continue this on the other side of the break. This is David Niles here with Adam Minahan and David Dean talking about virtue in sports. We'll be back.
What do you think of the scotch?
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, isn't it good?
Really good.
Yeah.
I love it. We went for that humanities program. We spent a semester in Ireland, and we alternated.
This is back when it was Catholic.
Yes.
Yeah.
I hope we had nothing to do with the. No.
I don't think it was you. I am pretty sure it wasn't.
Positive it is
I don't
not
think we
you.
did. No,
Pretty sure it wasn't you.
I don't think we did, but it's a very sad story.
Yeah.
Very sad. But We spent half the time out on this little island called Nishboffen, and the other half of our time.
That's a fun name.
You know what?
Nishboffen?
Yeah, it means the island of the white cow.
That is hilarious.
There you go. But no, it's and then we spent half the time at Galway. But they had, speaking to the Ardbeg, they had on the island they had peat. These like big, almost fields of peat. And that was they would go, very hard and black and kind of tarish, and they would go and dig it up, and that was their what they put in their fireplaces.
Yeah, it's weird
to heat the home.
Right.
Yeah, because there was no wood on this island.
It had to smell?
It did, but it had a kind of a nice smell, I thought.
Okay.
And you probably got used to it really quick.
Sure.
I think it was a natural segue to a peaty Scotch, but didn't want to talk about the Scotch much around the Irish because
they get offended.
Antagonisms there.
Right.
There's these people.
We made whiskey. No, we made whiskey.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And I mean, I like Irish whiskey, but if the Irish are trying to say that they invented whiskey, it's like, well, the Scotch sure perfected it then,
Well, then you'd have to, if you're in Ireland, you'd have to be careful.
Yeah.
I agree.
Get ready to duck.
I agree. That's the kind of comment you like.
You don't
make
in Cork, Ireland, for sure.
Right.
No, you wouldn't want to. You'd be finding yourself on the floor.
Yeah.
And no one was helping you pick you up. No one would be helping pick you up. So my grandfather is in the football Hall of Fame, high school football Hall of Fame here. Actually, both of our grandfathers are in.
Oh, really? Okay.
And it reminded me when you were saying that team ran it up to 106 to nothing or whatever. When he was when he was coaching in high school, there was one time they were blowing out a team. I think at one point it was 42 to nothing at that point. And so he put all of the special team players, all of the running backs, receivers, quarterback on the line, and put all of the linemen in the running back, receiver.
Yeah.
So that way,
that's good.
Just to slow down the bleeding, because he was just he just realized we're gonna run this up, because he played everybody on that team.
Who wants to be quarterback?
Who wants to be? Yeah. And so it's he had a 250-pound quarterback,
having the center try to throw the ball.
Right. Yeah.
No, I think that's great. I mean, that's what you should do. Take the kid that wants to be quarterback but normally would never ever be quarterback.
Yeah.
And let them have a shot at it. Why not? What do you have to lose?
Right. Nothing, because you're killing them.
Yeah. It's
right.
It's
Game's in the bag.
Right. But my grandfather made a very distinction, or he wanted to make sure that when they won and they were outmanning the other team, that it was not embarrassing. He wanted to make sure it was never an embarrassing loss for the other team. As much as he had.
I mean, it's going to be embarrassing.
As much as he could.
I mean, Adam, when you look when you look across the line of scrimmage and the center is throwing the ball, that's already embarrassing. Okay.
Well,
there's no way.
And that's why
there's no way to avoid.
That's why I caveated it to the best of his ability.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
That's right.
Because at some point there's nothing you can do about it. You guys are not very good.
Right.
So when I was in 1st to 6th grade, I was in a basketball team. The coach had a pretty strict rule that I couldn't go in the field if we weren't up by 20 points. So it's when I see them up by 20, we were a pretty good team. If we were up by 20, I would be looking okay, I'm gonna start stretching now.
It's my time to
my
shine.
Moment. Yeah. I was gonna say, I didn't know you played basketball.
That's why.
But I was on a team. I actually didn't play very much. That's funny.
That is funny.
I rode the pine. All right. Let's keep rolling.
Welcome back to the Catholic Man Show. I'm David Niles. Here with Adam Minahan. David Dean is our special guest. And we're excited. Tulsa's just got it going on.
We've said Tulsa is the place. Eastern Oklahoma is the place for Catholic culture. We are really changing things here in Eastern Oklahoma.
Yeah, I mean the Archdiocese.
Not we as in
I'm not so sure.
But I'm just saying
Those guys and the the archdiocese.
I just don't pay attention to what's going on over there.
I wouldn't go there.
I just know that there are a lot
that.
of great things happening in eastern Oklahoma for sure.
This show airs all
right.
throughout the state of Oklahoma, and so I just want to say that I am kidding. I'm making a joke about the archdiocese is great.
I hope you have a bazooka ready.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
No, they're very kind.
Cannot disclose.
Yeah, whether or not you do or
yeah,
not.
I cannot confirm or deny the validity of that. But so we're talking about sports. Obviously, it does not need to even be said that there's a lot of great things that a child can learn from playing sports, physically, just for his own virtue, right? I mean, obviously. So, what would you say? Because I think there's also an attitude that if you don't put your kid into sports, it's almost like child abuse. That as if playing sports is the only way to learn these certain things. And I don't think that attitude is quite, that's not it either. What would you say? What do you think about that?
I think what parents should do out there is, and I've heard other parents do this, and it seems to work very well, is when your children are younger, usually if you live in a town of any size, there's several leagues. One might be YMCA or might be a church, different churches leagues. Some might be more specifically organized for sports. But, check them out. Find out what they're about. I mean, do they have the proper attitude toward, let's say it's a second, third grade, what is that, probably 8, 9, 10-year-old. Do they have the proper attitude that an 8 to 10-year-old that you would want for your son in a football, soccer, or basketball team, whatever it is, where they're going to be learning the basics. They're going to learn some things about character, and so much of that is the coach. And I mentioned this the other night in my talk. The profound influence of the coach. How do they act? And specifically today, especially what's their language like?
Right.
And I'm even talking about tone of voice. I mean, I've seen grown men just berate kids who are not their own son. And I don't mean to sound soft here, but after all, this is third grade soccer.
Right.
Right.
This isn't World War II.
When you step back a little bit.
Right. It's not the Super Bowl. I mean, come on. This is third grade soccer. So what is their sort of philosophy or their how they run the league and what's important to them? And I think as a parent, you have an obligation to pursue that.
Yeah.
And so I think that helps a lot because I think you'll see everything out there. We always read the news about the parent that gets thrown out of the baseball game because he went after the umpire with a baseball bat or the other coach or something.
There are a few things more embarrassing than
that.
Yeah. You'd think that would be one of the good things about social media, right? That everybody has their phone on.
Right.
And they would be filming you as you're chasing the umpire around the field, but it hasn't seemed to work so far.
There are just some parents who cannot not speak up. It's like...
And see, I think this is a real danger for the parent now because it's not just that you're setting a bad example for your son. It's that you're acting like a complete idiot.
Yeah.
In these situations. And so there you have a whole crowd of people. And so what's going on inside of you, fathers, is what we all need to ask ourselves as fathers. What's going on inside of us that we get to this point that we're so offended? Because I would argue that's actually then at that point, because anger makes us irrational.
Yeah.
And then that sort of behavior really makes us look weak. We think in that moment of anger we're being strong and, we're pursuing some distorted version of justice or something because the umpire called the third strike on my son. But that's way wide of the mark. I mean, it might have been a bad call, but again, so what?
Yeah.
Life doesn't always go the way we want, does it?
No.
Right.
So I used to...
It's actually good for them to even catch the bad breaks.
That's right.
To be able to learn and adapt and move forward.
Absolutely. Yeah, most of the greatest discoveries and movements forward in history have been through mistakes.
Right.
We all learn from mistakes. And in fact, most people probably learn the best from mistakes.
Right.
And so let them stumble a little bit. It's okay.
So I used to coach my little sister's team. I helped my dad coach in basketball for, 5 years. And so a handful of times I saw an adult get kicked out of the game by the referee, and it's like there's just like nothing more embarrassing, especially for the kid of that parent, like dad's getting kicked out of the game again, like it's just terrible. Like don't be that
guy.
Yeah, don't be that guy.
I'm really glad you brought that up, David, because before I was superintendent, for a lot of years, decades, I've been a headmaster or principal of schools, and by the way, they've all been either Catholic or Christian schools, so that makes the story even more deplorable. That I can't tell you how many fathers I've had to walk out of basketball gyms, particularly because you have the closed environment, right, unlike a football field or soccer field. I've had the official look at me because I would go to him before the game and say, "Look, I'm here. I'm in charge, and if you have any trouble, let me know." And I can't tell you how often he'd look for me and he'd point at me and tell him to come over. He'd say, "That man over there on the third row in the blue sport coat, he's gone or your team forfeits." And so I have to go over and get him, escort him out of the gym. And there's just a stillness that falls over the gym. And fortunately, I've never been escorted out as a father, but I've escorted a lot of fathers out. And I felt kind of embarrassed. I mean, for him.
Right.
That I'm having to walk this grown man out of a gym. And the whole crowd's just stopped, right? The team's gone back to their benches. The refs are at the table there, talking to the scorekeepers and all that. And I'm walking this gentleman out the door. And he's finished, for that game.
Yeah.
So now he can't even watch his son play. And I can only imagine what his son is thinking at that point. I never, of course, went and talked to any of those sons, but I can't imagine it was good.
Right. Yeah.
So, David, here's like the crux for me when it comes to sports and like family life. Like there are a few things like as a father, I'm not willing to give up, right? I don't want to give up the majority of the time having family dinner together. Family dinner is very important for a thriving family to develop traditions.
Right. Everything comes together at the table.
At the table. Another thing is like making sure that Sunday is a holy day. Making sure that we enjoy it for its leisure. In sports today, it attacks both of those things, right? So if I have my sons in soccer or football or basketball, it doesn't matter whatever sport you want to mention. They have practices in the evenings, and then they have games on the weekends. Sometimes they have games on Sundays. It's hard for me to justify one. I set the rule, like we're not having games on Sundays. However, it's almost like unfair at times to my son, who has worked all week long and been disciplined and showed fortitude and pushed himself and showed grown together as a team and shown like that he has to be part of the team. It's not about him, and then say, "Sorry, son, you can't play on Sundays." Right. You have to let your team down.
Yeah, and it's also not fair to the other team, to the other team members, right?
And so this is where I really struggle when it comes to sports and family life and how to juggle this, because very few times now is it just a recreational sport. It's not really the YMCA anymore. It's like you have to go on a traveling team, or you have to if you dip your foot into the swimming pool, it's actually you're all in. You're jumping completely in. You don't get to like just test it out for a little bit. And so this is really hard as a dad, because you want your son. There are great things like we've mentioned that sports, help build up your son or daughter. Right. But they're good things. But at what cost?
Exactly, and it's very difficult today. And I think back to my previous point is that's something you can ask when you're checking out some of these leagues or teams: is do you play on Sunday? Do you practice on Sunday? So Catholic fathers out there, you really need to exercise your virtue, because as the head of the family, this is where you need to step in and try to help make these decisions for your family. A lot of these leagues will play on Sunday or practice, and there may come a point at which you just say, no, that's not going to happen, especially if it's Sunday morning.
Right.
We're going to go to Mass, and as a family, we're going to come home. We're going to have lunch and so forth. And my son, Samuel won't be there. So, you tell the coach, and then you really just have a talk with your son. Back to the whole idea of discipline, as it said, means to learn. So explain to your son why this is important. Like, what is our end, or tell us, in terms of life. And there's good natural things like sports and activities like that. But ultimately, there's the supernatural. Mm-hmm. And as you know,
the natural is hopefully leading you to the supernatural.
Yes. And when it leads you away from and distorts that, then you, fathers, particularly need to step in and say, no, that's not going to happen in this family.
Yeah.
And it's difficult. Obviously, your son will probably most likely be disappointed. He may face some ridicule. Or you might, as a father, face ridicule from other fathers.
You definitely. It's not that you might. You definitely will.
That's right. Yeah.
You just need to be mentally prepared for that, because you'll be the weird guy, right?
That's right.
And then you'll be also the guy who's like, oh, you don't really care about this. Like, unfortunately, if you're listening on the radio, we're out of time. I highly suggest you go to thecatholiccommandsshow.com. You can listen to this full episode, because I'd like to continue talking about this and a few more things with David Dean. We're on the Lord's team.
The winning side.
So raise your glass.
Cheers to Jesus.
Cheers. I mean, because this is the problem. When you make this stand, and you're the only one making this stand, and dads are...
Well, you're not, but you might be at that practice. Like at
in
that,
your team, you're definitely going to be the only guy.
But the thing is, the other people who have made that stand, they're not there anymore.
Right.
So you're not the only one, but you're the only one there at the time.
Let me tell you, it feels
right at that moment.
very lonely. I mean, you feel very exposed, because no one else is thinking this way. And I'm not. Again, let's caveat this and saying, like, if that's what you do with your family, this isn't a judgment here. I'm just trying to work through this myself as a dad of young children.
Because honestly, there's nothing about having a sport on a Sunday that seems inconsistent with honoring and like keeping holy the Sabbath. Because let's say you and the neighbors decide to
pick up a football game.
Exactly. Play. I mean, that is actually exactly what like a holy Sunday looks like.
Yes.
So there is a difference when it's an obligation. And now it becomes a form. It's like it becomes a form of work. That like, oh, I'm not free on my Sunday to like celebrate the way I want. But if you're in a good league on a good team, like there's nothing like fundamentally inconsistent with playing a game on Sunday.
Exactly.
But it's, well, like I said, when it's an obligation now, and it's,
that changes the game.
And it's not like, it changes the game. Exactly, because the pickup game with your neighbor happens at a spontaneous moment when it works for the family, like you're not having to interrupt family life, so there's a difference. But anyway.
Well, exactly. And it's again, it goes back to that amateur notion, right? That I think that has kind of a derogatory notion in our modern culture to be an amateur. Is like, what?
Right.
But actually, it's a great thing. I would argue it's, I did this once with another group. I said, would you rather be a professional or an amateur? And I wasn't just talking about sports, but I said almost anything. And don't we as men, if someone asks us, why do you love your wife? Are you going to say some practical, pragmatic reason of what she does for me?
I love her professionally.
Yes. Or it's just because I love her for who she is.
She's very proficient as a woman. And
yes, very efficient. Yeah. So, I mean, and of course, imagine then how your wife would feel.
Yeah.
She would hear your response. And I think you just translate that over to your children. So your example, you're at the park or something, and a pickup game comes up. To me, that's perfectly natural. It's normal. You're doing it because you like it, love it, and you're with your family, or you're doing this, and it's healthy, right? I mean, so many things in our society, they're not sitting in front of a screen, looking at Lord knows what, and they're having a good time, with you as the father and maybe other kids, and who knows, you might even meet some other good families through that process, and it's just so much more healthy. Again, back to what we were talking about earlier, you're not 2 hours away at some tournament.
In a hotel room that night.
A hotel room that night, and getting up having a Egg McMuffin for breakfast, and going off to the next game.
Right.
And I know we've all done that a little bit, but I think we really need as Catholic fathers to step back and say, what's important here? Because I can tell you, our children are all grown, and I know it sounds so common and mundane, but your children do grow up fast. And so all you young fathers out there, that 18 years or so, it's going to just go by in a flash.
Right. How old is Luke?
He's 8.
Right. So on his next birthday, half of his life at home will be over.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's really your time with him.
Right.
Because there's the other side of this, right? The other side of the coin is that when they turn 18, even if they go to trade school or college, where that is, they're probably leaving home in most cases, not always, but
he will. Yes.
So your influence will diminish a little bit.
He will.
He will.
Yes. So, this is your moment.
Right.
And enjoy it and have that time and with your son, because it will go quickly and it will be over soon, and they will go off as men should, young men should, and kind of chart their path in life. But it's a shame that our culture has become so jaded. I know some of you dads probably have kids in high school sports, and one of the big trends right now are these select leagues, the AAU teams. And the last school I was a headmaster, the AAU team came out and said, this was for girls soccer, they said to the girls, if you're going to play on our AAU team, you can't even play on the high school team. I mean, so it just gets worse and worse, right? I mean,
why?
It's terrible that you don't have
time to do both.
Yeah.
Is the AAU team supposed to be give you a better opportunity than playing on the high school team?
Well, for the college scholarship, right? For the college scholarship. So that's what they'll say, though, and it is true. Maybe not in football, but some other sports. These college coaches, as they go to AAU team, I can actually give you an example. Our middle son Sam was a very good basketball player, and we made the mistake, I think, of putting him on a select team, as they called him at the time. And they were quite good. We lived in Texas at the time, and it was very competitive. And I think we went to Houston one time for this tournament, and there's all select AAU type teams. And there's up in the stands, guess who's there? Roy Williams, Mike Krzyzewski, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and Bill Self, just all these top tier coaches.
Now you were excited to see Bill Self.
Well, yeah, of course,
right.
I would have said Rock Chalk Jayhawk.
Right,
but,
yeah.
But the rest of them I didn't know.
Yeah.
Well, and Roy a little bit, since he was a former KU coach. But I'm just explaining the phenomena right now. So if you want your son to go to that level, the high school experience is not important. And so I'm trying to tie all this in back to the family. So not only is it hurting the family, but now kids in schools are having to sort of leave their
school sports,
their school team in sport, to go to this next level to get to the final level. Mm-hmm. I mean, I really, my point is to all you out there is that this is very disordered system we have. And again, you as the father are the one that needs to step in and pull this back in, to the home and do what fathers, be paternal.
Yeah, because your kids only get one childhood.
That's correct.
You can't. You can try to make up for things later, but it's never going to be the same, right? And so if you don't, the family life, that's the most important.
Yes, absolutely.
You have to just make sure that you're having your priorities and that you know what they are. That there is a hierarchy and it's not subjective. Okay, so you might say, oh well, I value these things above other things. Some values within a family can be subjective to certain degrees. But there is an objectively, your family life is more important than a sports career, or any career, actually, because your children can be successful in many things. There's so many opportunities for a young child. So whether they play college sports or not, that is not going to be, because we have to remember, we're trying to get our kids to heaven.
Correct.
Not into the NFL.
Correct.
If they get into the NFL, you get to retire early,
Like,
which is a perk.
That's great. If they like,
to your earlier point.
you know, like if your kids can become Phillip Rivers, you know what I mean? Like that's ideal.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes,
we're talking
yes.
best case scenario right there.
Yeah.
You know, and obviously we want to strive for best case scenarios,
Yes.
but we have to be realistic, and we cannot compromise. You're not going to make a Phillip Rivers by compromising your family life. You know, that's not how you create an NFL quarterback who insists that a priest travel with the team so that he can go to daily mass. You know, that's how you get a lot of maybe other quarterbacks, but not one like that who prides and insists upon the practice of his faith. You know,
Yeah, and what a great example of fortitude. We were talking about that earlier.
yeah,
I mean, imagine the fortitude that took
right.
for Phillip Rivers to do that.
yeah.
To step out and say that. Talk about being lonely or exposed, you know, like
Yeah.
in that aspect.
What would be fascinating is to find out if there were other players on the team that all of a sudden jumped in and said, "Phillip, thank you.
Yeah.
I love it. I didn't.
You know, it's
I
actually
didn't
it's
step up
actually
and
an
say it, but I love it.
Yeah, it's actually an opportunity. There's going to be a lot of guys.
Yeah.
You know, if you make that stand on the team, a lot of other dads be like, you know what, that's not something I've really thought about before.
Persecution is always an opportunity.
But, yeah, but
Absolutely.
but that rings true, and I'm gonna follow suit.
Yeah. No, that's right. That's right. And I think it. You know, we're talking about virtues tonight, and of course, fortitude is one of the cardinal virtues.
Yeah.
And you know, prudence is the other one. You know, St. Thomas,
The mother
Calls
of the cardinal
the mother,
virtues.
yeah, the mother. Even I think one time he uses the reference to charioteer, you know, of the other virtues. And this is where, again, to our topic, fathers have to be prudent. And prudence does not mean what modernity thinks as you sit back and you kind of wait and check out which way it's going, the wind's blowing, you know, and okay, well, I guess it's the safe route. That's not prudence at all.
No, like, well,
It's decisive action at the right moment.
and they would say, oh, prudence is like holding your kid back maybe once or twice so that they are older.
And more dominant.
Yeah, when they, as a freshman, you know, I mean, it's the prudent thing to do. It's like,
No.
well, I don't think you know what prudence is, you know.
Exactly.
So
Yeah,
I do have a very practical question. We have a lot of Catholic families listening with bigger families. So something comes to play in sports and family dynamics is when you have, 4 to 6 kids, and everybody wants to do a different sport. Sometimes you can get all the boys doing similar sport, but to what degree do you compromise, somebody excelling in what they're good at or in what they actually want to do versus like, okay, if we're going to have a sport, everybody's going to do the same thing because we're not going to go to 4 or 5 different classes, right? So, but you see how out of touch I am with sports that I call it classes instead of
Classes,
practice.
yes.
Yes.
It's a good learning environment. That's where you're going with that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what's the balance there to where you show
It's a good question.
every kid has an important place in the family, but at the same time you gotta compromise to where you're not breaking over your calendar for all these different things.
Right, because you got 9 kids, and all of them play sport.
You become a glorified taxi driver,
No,
and not a parent.
right.
I mean,
That's right.
you're having to like hire people to take your kids around and stuff.
Right. No, that's a very good question. I think one of the things you do is you say, we'll try to pick your favorite sport. And that's it. We're not going to do 3 sports or 4 sports a year, which some families do. Now, that's easier for the 2-child family.
Yeah. I
to
mean,
do.
they have literally nothing to do. So I know that they think that they're busy, and they're like the
Don't do that.
2-child families. They're like, what? No, we're so busy. It's like, yeah, I know. I thought that too when I had 2 kids.
Yeah. No, it's much more difficult. Obviously, the more children you have, but I think you try to look at your children. I know with we just had 4. We wanted to have more, but we had 4, and so I felt blessed with the 4. Obviously, we have, and as they grow up, we can kind of see a couple of our kids were a little more athletic than the others.
Yeah.
And we let them all have opportunities at different times, but one or 2 in particular seemed to be a little more geared that way, and so we did a little bit more with them. As I said, one of them earlier went on with the basketball and so forth, and we had another one go on pretty far with tennis. But But again, I think you just have to, well, probably have to do the best you can, given your situation. If you have 9 kids, you're going to have to make some decisions. And I think one of the first ones is just, okay, if you get one sport, that's what we're going to try, and we'll see how you do. And maybe you'll find out some of them, the kids won't like it. Soccer is always, I think, kind of the beginning sport, and a very good one.
Yeah, soccer is a good sport.
The gross motor skills that for young children, I think, are really good. And
I'll tell you, when I was coaching basketball, it was so obvious the girls who had played soccer because they knew how to move their feet. Like just that they had basic footwork skills, and it translated in. They made way better basketball players just because they weren't stumbling. Like they knew how to run and they knew how to move their body. It was a huge advantage.
I think it's a great kind of intro sport, right?
I do too.
When they're young, to get them playing soccer, and some will like it, some won't. Some will want to go on to other things, but it's a great way to start, and then you can kind of figure out. I think too, I'm assuming here, if you have 9 or 10 children, you might have several that just aren't that interested in sports.
Yeah.
Right. And so maybe just a little bit of exercise is good. You go walk around the park, maybe you get into that pickup game at the park we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
But and I think then what you try to do with those children is you find something else that they like to do because they don't like athletics that much or just don't feel oriented.
Just pray it's not horseback riding.
Oh, really?
That sounds expensive.
It's so expensive.
Mucho.
It's a good sport, though.
I would never let my kids horseback ride.
No? Uh-oh.
You have to have a horse.
Yeah. Like, you don't have to.
We let our kids ride. We had a couple horses.
I mean, like as like a competitive thing.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Oh, no. I would love for my children to ride a horse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you're out in the country, you should get a horse.
I mean, but like, you have to have a trailer, and now you have to buy a truck that can pull the trailer.
That's true.
And
I like that idea, though.
yeah, I would like to have.
That's pretty macho.
I actually would like to have the truck.
Get a
But,
dually.
Yeah.
honey,
I need that
Elizabeth,
350.
she, I think, could be a really good horseback rider.
Yeah.
So
Better get that.
I'm gonna go ahead and buy the truck.
Yeah.
Have it in her.
Get
nope,
ready for
nope.
it.
Just in case.
Never put her on a horse, but I can tell. I mean, I've got an eye for this kind of thing. And to answer your question, I think what you do is you take like let's say you have 9 children. I think you take your 3 most unathletic kids and you say, look, you don't get to do sports, but I will give you $100. Here you go. And that's what you do. And then you settle it that way and be like, look, your brothers,
Dad advice with David Niles.
your brothers, your other siblings, they're athletic, but you are going to excel in industry in other ways. And I'm starting you right now. Here's $100
Try to make that 2
to not bring this up again. So, your others,
That is not good advice. No.
Well, there could be things like music lessons or
Right.
Yeah.
that you could
I think
point your children.
I think it'd be great to
You know what? I'm glad you brought that up because that I think is a really, really good point. That almost all of the virtues that people talk about and are so that you can learn in sports very well can also be learned through music. Whether it comes to like team participation, it's like, well, have you ever tried to play in an orchestra? Or
just jam with another person.
Or exactly. I mean, because that could be
you could like really be good at the guitar, and then like another guy gets in here, you're like,
but
we don't sound good at all. Together.
It takes a ridiculous amount of perseverance to learn an instrument, and there's no games where you win. There's no winning where there's obvious public recognition. Unlike hopefully, like if you're learning, like a music teacher is like doing concerts and performances, as you learn, which is kind of like that. But learning an instrument, I think, is significantly harder than learning to play a sport. And so that's another really good avenue for children because you can practice the instrument at home,
Yeah, I would highly recommend if you can give your children piano lessons. And I know that
the piano, I think, is the best instrument to learn, to start off.
Absolutely. You obviously learn melody, you learn mathematics,
the
quarter note, the half note, the full note, all these things, the scales.
The scale, that's what it is. Like you learn scales. It's like it scales. I mean, that's what a piano is. It's like music theory in an instrument.
Right. And again, it's just like the athletics. If you think about it, let's go back to the family of 9 children. You're going to have 2 or 3 that are going to love the piano. And they may want to maybe go on with a guitar, which is another good instrument. And you can go find a cheap acoustic guitar.
Sure.
You know, at a guitar store, or, you know, was it Facebook Marketplace? I don't recommend that too much. But
Yeah,
you know how I am.
it actually is pretty good though.
I'm a Neanderthal.
Yeah.
But anyway, but wherever you find it, you can find a cheap guitar and let them start to, you know, play around with it a little bit. And I think you'll find that a couple of your children want to go that direction. They wouldn't want to go to athletics.
Yeah.
And then if you do have that, or if you or your wife can do something on the piano, some music, you sit around and sing songs. And I'm going to keep going back to the amateur thing. It's, you know, you're not some professional choir. You should be sitting around singing songs from time to time, you know, really good ones with your family. And if you're off key, who cares?
Right.
It doesn't matter.
Your kids definitely don't care.
No,
now, especially when they're little, they don't even know.
They
You know
don't
what I
care,
mean?
but just sing some good old-fashioned
Anna
songs.
belts songs at Holy Mass, and like there's times I'm
Don't
like,
you just love that? I think it's hilarious.
I do
like
too.
when little kids are like, all of their body
Yeah.
is
Yes.
like singing this song.
It's
It's like,
great. Yeah.
that's
Singing out
praising the Lord right there.
Yes,
You know?
I mean, they're off key. Who cares?
Yeah,
And
they don't care.
They
are
don't care.
Belting it out.
In fact, I don't know if they know, but I think even if they did know, they would not care. Like
No.
they're
No.
they are
all
loving it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They're all in.
Exactly. You know, and I know a lot of you have listeners in probably all 50 states or more, you know, other Canada
Yeah.
or wherever. And one of the things we did in Kansas, so we learned Home on the Range. That was the state song. And that's a great
That's
song.
your state song.
I think so. If
Okay.
I remember correctly.
I said
Yeah.
your state song. I mean, you're in
Yeah.
Oklahoma now, but
Yeah.
that's Kansas state song. I
Yeah,
did not know
think
that.
I think it is. I may be wrong.
Oklahoma has the best state song by far. It's the one state song that almost everybody knows
because of the play.
because of the
Oh,
play.
the musical.
Yeah.
The musical, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oklahoma every night.
Oh,
Yeah.
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 So
I know that.
I mean, like
Yeah.
everybody knows the
Well-
Oklahoma state song, and it's like, who knows? Can you think of any other? I mean, you
Well,
obviously
Home on
know.
the Range is pretty.
You,
good
I mean, Home on the Range, but that's I guess they adopted that as their.
Yeah, so I mean, the beautiful part about this is, so your children learn something about their state, which they should.
Yeah.
They should know something about their home. It's
Right.
very important that they know where they're from, because in some sense that's who they are. And then, of course, there's the advantage of learning music, you know, the melody, the math, all the things we're talking about. And then there's that collegial, familial atmosphere. You are all, hopefully, just sitting in the living room kind of having fun.
Yeah.
And you're singing songs, and this is good family time. And it's something that they'll remember. And especially if you don't do it very well. You know, when they get older, they're going back, do you remember the time we sat around and, you know, in the backyard or around in front of the fireplace and we sang these songs and you know, we're off key and whatever, and they'll make fun of one another. You know, like Johnny has a great voice and James couldn't carry a tune in a bucket. You know, and you have fun with that, and it's just, you know, it's such a normal human thing, and I
Right.
really encourage you all to do that.
I gotta tell you this story. So Elizabeth, Dave's oldest daughter, it was her birthday, or was it her feast day? One of the two, birthday or
Yeah.
feast day, and the Minahans realized, oh, it's Elizabeth's birthday.
Oh, this is her feast day.
Her feast day.
Yeah.
It's her feast day. We need to go over there and sing a song to her, you know, for her feast day. And then we realized, well, what song would be appropriate to sing? And so we were like trying, and the one that we all knew. And so like we were trying to figure it out, and like we threw out a couple options, and we realized really quick it would just be Haley and I singing, or it would just be one person singing. But all of us know the Dona Nobis Pacem. So we walked over there, and I don't know, like, that song is not an easy song to sing if you're not a very good singer, which I'm not personally. And so we go over there singing Dona Nobis Pacem Pacem, you know, and we're doing this whole song, and we are just, I mean, nails on the chalkboard.
It wasn't that bad. It was not
Wasn't
that
that
bad.
bad?
We were pretty bad. But Elizabeth was over there like as smiling,
Oh,
ear
yeah,
to
just-
ear,
oh,
like
just glowing.
just glowing that
That's
we were
great.
over there singing
That's
to her. And I realized, you know what? I don't care. This is worth it.
Yeah. She didn't care.
She definitely didn't care. So,
No.
But it was it just part of like
no, that's
she's
right.
gonna remember it, and I'm gonna remember it just because how bad we were.
Yeah.
But she's gonna remember it for a different reason.
But I will tell you, like learning to play an instrument and like having played sports, like the things of my childhood, both of those things are some of the most like satisfactory things that I did. Obviously, an instrument has the advantage that I still continue to do that. You know, the fact
I can't believe I didn't get drafted this year. I thought I was gonna get drafted
what?
this year.
You know what?
I thought you were in.
I thought. I mean, with my solid 40 time and my bench press,
the
I thought,
NFL, they actually called me this year,
Yeah.
and I turned them down.
Did you?
I was like, you know what? I don't have time.
I'm hanging up my cleats.
I told him, well, this is what I told him. I was like, look, I'll do it, but I'm not coming to practice.
Practice?
Okay.
We're talking about
That's,
practice.
that's,
Like-
that's a professional attitude.
Like, I'll show up for the games, but I'm not doing practice. All right, because I'm busy,
Yeah.
Got other things.
and like I don't need practice. All right?
Mm-hmm.
I've been practicing for a long time. And they said
They didn't sign you.
Well, they didn't offer me. They said, well, we'll have to offer you less money, and I said,
Forget it.
and I said,
Forget it.
don't ever call me again.
Yeah.
That's what I told him.
Fair enough.
It was Terry Bradshaw. He was like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
he was the one. He's just like third party deal. And I
Oh.
said, like, Terry, you tell those guys. I won't tell you what I said, but that's what I said.
So I thought it would be a good way to end the show with.
Are we off the path?
Wait, are we recording?
With
We're in the
like
ditch.
we're having a good time, and I want to keep it going. By maybe we could share, the one sports story about your son, whether it's funny or epic or anything that comes to your head, son or daughter.
I don't have any. Okay, actually,
You
I
have one son.
well, yeah, but he's 1.5. He does not play any sports. He walks.
What?
He does walk.
You're just a bad dad.
So
Yeah. That's bad parenting.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I'll start, and I'll give you guys time to think of your stories.
I already have mine.
okay.
Okay. So in my story, Santiago, who is 6 now, as he would tell you all the time, was probably 2.5 or 3, and he was in a soccer league with Luke and Jude, Adam's kid, and we're having a soccer game in the YMCA, and they're just going back and forth. Everybody's just, at that time you're just chasing the ball.
Pack ball.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
everybody. The ball is there running. So I
There's
see,
like one person who knows who's faster and good on the field,
Yeah.
and they have the ball all the time. And it's like an escort service. Everybody is like escorting that person
Exactly.
around the field,
Exactly.
right?
So Santiago realizes that he's not the fastest one, and as the mass is running, he's running, and he just goes from a run to a walk, and then from a walk to like a very slow walk, and then he gets in 4 legs, and he starts eating grass, and he looks at me and says, "Papa, I'm a cow." And he just starts eating grass in the field because he was a plain cow at the time. He realized, you know what? I'm not going to waste time chasing these really fast people. I'm just going to eat grass and play that I'm a
This
cow.
grass, this looks like nice grass.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I was a cow, I'll bet I would
I
love
bet.
it. You know what? I'm just going to be a cow and see what it's like.
Yeah.
And then Juan went to the car after that.
Yeah.
Cried.
Yeah.
There was the LSU coach, Les Miles.
He would always eat
grass.
eat the grass, become one with the field.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He seriously did that. That's
I know he did.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
But I was wondering what
In
he
the
did
end,
with
like-
artificial turf.
In the end, like, how'd that work out for him?
we
though,
don't ask
you know?
that question.
No?
That's not a question you ask.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here's my sports story. This is from yesterday. So we had a Little Flowers
Yeah.
gathering. You were there,
Yes.
Adam. You were there with your Little Flower.
Anna Faustina.
Little Flowers. You should just look it up. It's a great little organization for young ladies. And so it's at my parents' house. One of the things we were doing is we were having a cornhole tournament. I mean, the cornhole. What do you call a cornhole? It's not a goal. A cornhole board.
Yeah.
They were
So, yeah.
close together, right? Because these are for little kids. But it was a dad paired up with one of their children, and so it was Elizabeth and I paired up, and I knew that was not going to be it was going to be fun, but it was not going to be like a winning combination.
Mm-hmm.
So I was paired up. Our first game was against the Maddoxes.
And they're very
Brandon
athletic.
Maddox, he's the basketball coach for Bixby High School. Okay.
Oh, okay.
He's a winner. Okay, he likes to win, and he'll verbally tell you that. He's a trash talker. That's he's a trash talker, right? I'm just gonna say for the record, he and I, when we threw against each other, I was destroying him. Okay. However, I was not destroying him half as much as his daughter was destroying mine. Okay.
Oh.
Okay. So, I was watching my oldest Elizabeth throw the beanbag, and it was like, okay, we have. You know what? She has so many other talents, so many other gifts. You know what? Like, it was making me think. Like, people talk about athletic ability, but who gets an award for their compassion? Elizabeth, my eldest, she is compassionate, like out the wazoo. She will give up her she'll give up her candy or her ice cream to one of her siblings all the time, and it's like, I don't know why you did that. That was amazing. You can't have my ice cream. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so anyway, when she's throwing this beanbag, she's like swinging her arm behind her back. Like, you want to make a nice straight line and then follow through. She doesn't know anything about that at all. She was like this roundhouse arm swinging. I can't believe that some of them landed on the board. But
did you coach her?
No.
No.
It was
just let this happen.
Like, I realized this is going to be over pretty quickly. We're just
I
going
don't have time to coach. It's almost over.
We're going to have a great time.
But call timeout.
But you know what? Okay, so
when the bear or something.
So we're playing against the Maddox. His little daughter's Marlo. When she was throwing, she was pretty good. Elizabeth was over there cheering for her, like, "Oh, that was great! Wow, you can do it!" And it's like, Elizabeth, we're trying to beat them. So it's like, that's my sports story.
She was practicing the theological virtue
right.
of charity.
She's like, she's doing great.
Super holy.
As a person, like, I'm really proud of her.
Yeah.
She's amazing.
I always think
that's
it's really
great.
funny how someday, many years down the road, our children are going to listen to this.
I
Possibly.
have also thought about
And
that,
they're
and I was
probably gonna be
thinking about it before I
embarrassed.
told the story.
Yeah.
Like, the truth is, Elizabeth, if you hear this in years from now and you're older, like, you were terrible at cornhole when you were 6, and that's just the way it was.
Yeah.
I still love you though.
Yeah.
So Luke, when we put him in t-ball, he.
This is a good story.
Yeah.
This is a good story.
So Luke, so I made the mistake, David. I made the mistake with my oldest. I skipped having a t-ball stand with him, so I would just start pitching to him.
Oh,
you know,
you're right.
underhand. But
But this is a kid when he was 3, could take a ball in one hand and a bat in the other, toss the ball in the air and hit it. When he was 3 years old.
See, this is why this whole topic is very interesting to me, because my kids are their mom is very athletic, and I could play sports somewhat as well. So
Adam was the quarterback of Bishop Kelly.
Okay.
So
Okay, I mean,
so my kids are
he's an athlete.
are very athletic, and they're athletically
I mean,
inclined,
I know he
so-
doesn't look athletic at all
anymore.
anymore.
At all. But
He looks weak. Is what he's.
I mean,
trying to say. He
very
looks so
weak,
weak.
yeah.
Right.
So
But back in the day,
I was.
Well, I thought you just turned down a contract with the Cowboys.
No, that was
me.
him.
That was me.
Oh, that was okay.
Yeah, I didn't get it picked up. I still didn't
You
get picked
didn't?
up. But so I ruined him for t-ball, because t-ball to him was boring.
Mm-hmm.
At that point,
Sure.
like when you go from coach pitch or you're pitching to just the balls on the stand, it's boring.
Yeah.
But that was the case, and so he had to hit the ball. So he would hit the ball off the tee, and he would smoke it. He did not want to run to first base, because he knew if he ran to first base, he didn't get to hit the ball again. So in the games, he would sit there and just crank it off the tee. And, in t-ball, nobody has really positions. They're all just kind of huddled around the the
they're
pitching
very
stand,
they're very general positions.
you know,
Yes.
and he would smoke it past everybody,
Oh.
but stay there, and wouldn't run to first base, because he didn't want to not be able to hit again.
Oh.
So
okay.
he gave the team time to run out there to outfield, pick up the ball, run all the way back to first base, tag first base.
Ow.
He's out.
Mm-hmm.
He's still at home base, saying that's fine, and he's ready to hit the
Give me
ball
another one, huh?
again.
Keep 'em
So
coming.
yeah, that's maybe in it.
It's pretty funny.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Let's hear yours.
Oh my. You want a younger? One
No,
or
like,
an
I want
older-
the best.
older kid.
I feel
want
like
the best.
I feel like your kids are old enough now where you could tell the most embarrassing sports story.
Well, I've got two actually. They're wildly different.
Okay.
So the youngest one's pretty simple. He somewhat like one of the other ones is that he was, I don't know, probably 5 or 6 on a soccer team, and
He eat grass.
he what?
He
did not eat grass.
Okay.
But what he
Santi's
would
gonna
do-
hate that story someday, dude.
I know. Yeah, he's gonna not like you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah.
He will never have a phone though, so no problem.
Yeah.
So our son, I think he was. I don't even know soccer that well, but he was a defender, right?
Yeah.
Back in the back of the field there, and they're doing the, I used to call it the beehive thing. You know,
Yeah.
They all run around just hive. No one sticks to their positions. And so one of the games, he's defender, and they're coming down the field. You know, what are they called? The forwards, the attackers, whatever. And he has struck up a great conversation with the goalie. And they're just sitting there shooting the breeze.
They're riveting.
And, the team just goes right by and scores. And we're yelling at him. Of course, he didn't hear.
Yeah.
And,
Right.
But, I thought, oh, well, it's all right.
We're gonna
At
stick
least he's got the gift of gab.
debate. You're going to debate.
Debate.
This is
Debate.
I'm
Debate.
enrolling you in Lincoln Douglas tomorrow.
Yes. So he's... But no, I just thought that was kind of fun. But I have another one though. I think is probably good for the dads.
okay.
Okay.
So our oldest son he went to the high school there in ninth grade. I think it was ninth grade. Yeah, out in Texas, down in Texas, outside of Fort Worth, and he was the new kid, and he was kind of thin, but he's real feisty, kind of a brawler type. He's very thin and so forth, and so. At one point during the year, some of the football guys were coming up and they'd push him in the locker and knock him down and stuff, and he'd come home and complain about it. So it was a dad moment for me because I said, what am I going to tell my son? Now, this is under the rubric of boxing as a sport. Okay, so I said, George, I think you have a decision to make here. You can probably let these boys pick on you for who knows how long, or at some point you can turn around and address it, and by that I mean punch the kid in the face,
Right.
as hard as you can. I mean, the next
Like
one
really hard.
yeah, like step back and let him have it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't know. A couple of days went by, and I said, and this is important too, because I told him, I said, George, and you'll probably get in trouble, and that's okay. Because
It's also only in. You're not just gonna like walk up to the guy the next day, right?
No, you got to be pushed in the locker, or
Right,
something
yeah,
like that,
it's
or
like-
knocked to the ground. So I said, you'll get in trouble, but as your father, I'll respect that, and we'll go from there.
We'll go have a beer afterwards.
Yeah, he's in ninth grade. He's ready for a little art.
Right.
game.
I mean, it's like
So, my I won't digress, but my wife used to get mad at me because I don't know what age exactly. I don't remember, but we'd smoke briars out, in the backyard sometimes. Just have a good pipe. Now, I mean, I waited till they were certainly probably in high school or close to college, but my wife never liked that. But anyway, so back to the story. So sure enough, a day or two later, the school principal calls. I just got home with my wife because I was at work, and so she calls me and goes, well, okay, you did it. You
Right.
said it.
right. Yeah.
You-
Totally. She's going like, hey,
Yeah.
remember
your
the
dad?
advice you
Yeah.
gave to
Yeah,
our
so-
son.
Right.
This
Yeah.
is your problem, honey.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
and so, went down and he got. I think he got kicked out for a day or two or something. But
really, even though he was like being picked on.
Yeah, I think the other kid got in trouble, but it was important because what happened, of course, was he turned around and just cold cocked this kid and knocked him to the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And he had to come home for a couple of days, and I was okay with that. We talked about it a little bit. I said, just again, important, to be a man, right? Fortitude, again, back to virtue. Sometimes a man has to do these things. And the great lesson was far greater than anything I ever said to him. Guess what? The next couple days later, we went back to school. Do you think anybody messed with him?
No.
Nope. Never again. Problem solved.
Yeah. Well, don't mess with him because he'll punch you in the face.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think, not all parents agree with that particular strategy, but I thought it was the right one.
But there was a time, a certain number of years ago, when almost every parent agreed with that strategy.
Yes.
So anyway.
Yeah. But times have changed.
There's a balance, and I think maybe like some kids have a temperament to understand that kind of response, and some children don't.
Right.
So it's just
no, and you have to gauge it with your you're right, your particular child and their temperament. But I knew our son George at that point. He was just kind of that. He was always feisty, and so he would probably do it, and he did.
And also, like, as the parent, I think it's important that you counsel your children. I mean, you have to try to, like, if you have insight into, okay, I know this seems like something that's going to be an ongoing problem, okay, then that's maybe you counsel your children to address that differently than something that was maybe one time or,
Right.
It's
situation.
It's
Context
not a recurring thing.
Context
Yeah,
is
absolutely.
key.
No, and this was repeated. I mean, it happened days and days and days on end, and he didn't want to go to school anymore.
Right.
Right. So it's like, okay, so it's decision time here, and you can go to I'm in education, obviously, and I've been a principal and headmaster and all those things, but the school's going to do what they can do. And there's always a dark corner in a school somewhere where kids can get in a fight or whatever.
And those are, options that need to be explored, but sometimes it makes it worse. Hey, right. They told me not to pick on, because bullies are bullies. And
that's right. That's right.
And there will always be bullies in your life.
Always.
Yeah,
you're right. I mean, as adults, we do a little differently. We don't typically punch one another, or do those sort of things, but
also
rude
a man that I feel like we just get like wussified, like men today, that there are certain times when a physical response is the virtuous thing to do.
Yes, I agree.
Like the example I have decided, like this is a decision I made, that if anybody ever insults the honor of my wife, then I am prepared to go to jail.
I agree, 100%.
In defending her honor.
Absolutely.
Like, yes, officer, I did it. I'm the reason why he looks like that. You know why? Because he said these things about my wife. So, like, that's a decision I've made. I don't expect that I'll ever have to, like, actually
carry that out.
Cash that in. You know what I mean? But
Dude, if I have to bail you out, though, you have to pay me back.
I will.
Okay.
No, David, I think you're absolutely right.
But
I think that's part
like
of the role of being a man.
Right.
You defend your wife and your children, and it in today's culture, especially, it might get you in some trouble. But I think
like, that's toxic masculinity. It's like, no, it's not. You know what was toxic was the guy who was insulting my wife.
That's right.
Like, he's the problem, not me.
No, that's exactly right.
Yeah,
that's exactly right. When Laura and I were much younger, we were at a play, Zorba the Greek. I think it was in Kansas City. My wife has this beautiful, big curly, kind of bushy hair. And, we had our seats. It was a beautiful performance of it and so forth. It's fairly long production. And so, you kind of tilt your head when you're at the play. I do that. Okay, she has, big head of hair. And so this guy behind her starts saying rude stuff to her. Like, would you stop moving around and all this? And you know, she kind of looked at him. I kind of looked at him. Like, what? And so a few minutes later, he says something else. And I guess I didn't hear that because it was like a big moment in the play or something, a lot of noise and action on the stage. She kind of nudges me. So I kind of look at the guy, like, I kind of give him that, that look, like, what's your problem? But I said anything. A few minutes later, so it's the third time, he makes some really smart remark to her. I stood up in the middle of the play at that moment, turned around. I can't actually repeat on the radio here what I said to him. But I said, if you're ready, let's go. Right now. Like, let's do it. Or shut your mouth. I mean, and I was...
There's a time for forceful language,
Yes, and, I mean, the play was going on. Everybody around was, I was just like, that moment. That's it, dude. You just crossed the line.
Yeah.
Then he didn't say anything the rest of the night.
Yeah.
What a coward. I mean, like...
Yeah. I mean, to my wife?
Right. It's like you're sitting right there. Like...
I mean, you bought your seat. We bought ours. What's the problem here?
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, so I think that...
Some people, I don't know if they have something to... I don't know what the deal is. Like, they have something to prove. I don't know.
But, I mean, you Catholic fathers out there, I mean, sometimes you may just have to do that, right? For your spouse or your children. Yeah.
The point that I wanted to make is that, like, I have made a decision about where that line is for me. And if something had happened in my life before I had made that decision, I don't know if I would have been able to, like, react the way I think I may have regretted later on, either like a lack of action or acting too soon. So it's just like something that a man needs to know, like, where I stand on certain things, what is the
this is the virtue foresight.
Where I draw the line. And so in this topic, every man needs to know where is the line drawn for themselves.
Yeah. And this is actually the virtue of prudence, because prudence is, we were talking about earlier, part of prudence is making the decision at the right time in the right place.
Right. And not thinking about it too long.
No.
Prudence doesn't act too quickly, and it also doesn't overanalyze.
Yeah, or delay the decision. So, it's really important, because I'm like you, David. I've had people come up and say very rude things to me and insult me from time to time, and I can take that, right? I'm like, okay, that's,
you can say what you want about me. That's exactly. I'm not going to fight you about that.
Exactly. But you say about my wife,
right?
Let's go.
Right.
It's on.
Right.
And
because my vocation, I actually took vows at the altar that I would honor her.
That's right.
Okay? And so, like, when I go before Jesus, I'm going to have to actually prove whether I did that or not. He's like, he's going to know. And so part of the way I honor her is the way that I uphold her honor. And so if you're the one who's dishonoring her, well, then you and I have a problem.
Yeah.
No, that's right. And I think, isn't it, we've got this place in the discussion, and it's the year of St. Joseph, and technically he was the foster father, right, of the Blessed Virgin.
I would not have wanted to fight St. Joseph. Like,
no, but
don't you know he would totally whoop you?
Yeah, what a great model, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he took care of business. He really did. No, I bet you're right.
Yeah.
I bet he was a tough dude.
I'll bet afterward you'd be like thinking, like, where did he get a staff? Like, that came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Oh,
that hurt.
Yeah. No, I mean it's put a big knot on your head.
Yeah.
Amongst other things.
It's a cudgel.
David, I am very grateful for you coming on tonight. I'm thankful that you said yes to hang out with us this evening. You've been a huge blessing. I thoroughly enjoy working with you. This is what I was telling Dave and Juan this the other day, is that it's the first place that I work where I actually enjoy working with the people that I'm working with, fully, like where like I can walk down the hall and say, I like you, I like you, I like you, and not like in an artificial way, but I truly do enjoy working with. So I'm grateful for you to be here in the diocese. You're a huge blessing to the Catholic schools here, but also just the diocese in general. And so I'm really grateful for you being here and
well, thank you.
Working with me.
Thank you. I really enjoy working with you too. We have a great group there.
We really do, and our team is just like being formed like every day. It's exciting.
We do have like the chance. Our chancery is full of amazing people.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like
really good people.
Mm-hmm.
a lot of chanceries around the country are full of people who are like, like not always. Let me like put a little context here. They're very well-meaning people, but not always the most efficient, or not always the people who are really the best at the job. They're very willing, and they're more willing than capable, I think, is the problem with a lot of church offices, right? But our chancery is filled with people who are really exemplary, I think. So, like you're a good example of that. I'm also very excited that you're here. So,
well, thank you. I'm a lot of other people over there are a lot better than I am, but what they do. But it's a great group, and I'm just honored to be a part of it and to be here. And I really appreciate you having me on the show tonight. It's been a lot of fun and enlightening. And, for me. And
we'll have you back on. We can talk about something like I don't know. Latin, the use of Latin. I don't know.
We could do a Latin thing.
We could do the whole episode in Latin.
And Latin.
Oh, yeah.
It'd be you talking.
It'll be 7 minutes long.
Quid est.
Quid est.
Well, we could start in Latin. And then we could just sort of devolve to
Have you heard
pagan English.
I have to tell you this before we leave. Have you heard our Latin story for the show?
No, I
So-
haven't.
This is really funny.
This is
Brace yourself.
This is brutally funny. At the end of the show, I always say cheers to Jesus. And so I thought, that would be cool to look up in Latin
Yes.
how to say cheers to Jesus. And so I know, I'm almost positive I've told you this story. But
Oh, yeah, you asked me about
yes.
this. Yeah.
And so I looked it up on Google Translate, which the thing about Google, they don't know anything about Latin. Okay.
No, they don't.
Like they might
hate
be
Latin.
They might be good at like languages that are still spoken,
Dead languages is not their thing.
But
No,
Latin,
no.
the thing is, when they were like whoever the developer was, it was not a priority for them.
Right.
And so I typed it in, cheers to Jesus, and it said, Iu bentium Jesu. IUBENT IUM at the end. Iu bentium.
Oh, that has something to do with like jubilation.
Okay. Well,
Jubilatio would be a noun, I think.
so
But
we
that's
were
still kind of a stretch. Okay.
Yeah, huge
like
stretch.
so like a couple years ago we were at Clear Creek recording, and brother Nesbitt, Father Nesbitt,
Father Nesbitt.
he was on the show, and he is also the probably most proficient at Latin among all of the monks. And so I said, Iu bentium Jesu.
Uh-huh.
And then
That's good.
afterwards, as soon as like we stopped recording, he just starts cracking up. And we looked at him, it's like, why are you laughing? He's like, what did you say? And I was like, oh, it's like I'm gonna I'm gonna teach it. Like, oh well, it means cheers to Jesus in Latin. He's like, no, it doesn't.
No.
What you said does not make sense. It means literally, and I forget what he said, but it like wasn't cheers to Jesus. And
Yeah.
I had been saying it for months on the show, thinking like,
You bentium what?
Jesu.
Jesu. Okay.
Iu bentium Jesu.
Yeah. He seems like
Bentium Jesu.
it was nonsensical because you were like wishing some sort of good to Jesus, who already
Is good.
Yeah,
Is
well,
good.
he said
Is
that.
good.
He said that later on that like even like
Yeah.
wishing something to Jesus is philosophically, and it's like, well, we're not like wishing him something good. We're just like saying to Jesus, like drinking in his like to, like you know what I mean,
his
like
honor.
just to his honor, right? Exactly.
he's like, you're wrong in 4 different
Yeah.
levels.
Yeah, you're
okay,
right.
let me start with the first one, and the second one, and the
Ouch.
third.
I can think
Ooh.
of 4 different
was-
ways that you're wrong.
Yeah. It was great
Actually,
in
there's
humility.
5.
So,
You shouldn't even say that. So we should.
yeah.
So
If-
anyway,
We'll
we,
have a
yeah,
Latin
we
session.
used to say "Iu bentium Jesu" at the end of episodes until we found out like only idiots say that.
Yeah.
Used to be
That's a good spot to cut it.
Isn't there a famous Latin hymn or expression like Jubilate Deo or something?
You're asking
Yes, there
the wrong
is, but
person.
they don't know about it. I know
think there
because
is.
Osmo's precious blood. So yeah.
Yes.
Okay, let's cut it there.
Okay.
Let's cut it
You need
there.
a lot of